Hello viewers, Mr. E reporting live for Sloptide News Network. We unfortunately have to bring you grave news today as we're receiving reports that a first nerf has struck the Arbites class. I'd like to encourage my viewers to bow your heads and take a moment of silence now to pay respects for what is certainly a completely dead class. Excuse me. Excuse me. Let's get on with the news and see what damage has been done. The patch notes start with just some cosmetic changes, namely the reversion of the change that brought us all of the precinct numbers, the very large precinct numbers that are displayed on the arbitrator's capes and shoulder pads for the last patch or so. Those are being removed as they are quite garish and it was unintentional behavior in the first place. So that small decal that represents your precinct will be returned to only the chest piece on certain cosmetics, which I am will be very thankful for, as that very large precinct number was quite garish on many of the outfits. The general fixes bring us an update to the latest version of FSR, so if you're an FSR user like I am, that should be good news. It should provide more stable and better frame rates, although this being Darktide and Fat Shark, we'd have to assume that there's going to be some knock-on effects that will in some way cause a bunch of crashes. And then down here for my one viewer who is in fact using the Turtulski Heavy Sword with the Chain Death Blow blessing, hey Tom, this has been fixed. The critical chance bonus now scales correctly on all tiers, and I know you'll be very glad about that. We have to get down here and talk about the real big issues today, guys. I know this reads Arbites fixes and tweaks, but what it should say is Arbites nerfs and death blows, and this class will be dead within 24 hours. No one will want to play it anymore. It's going to be the worst class in the game, and it's an outrage. It truly is an outrage. How could they do this to my boy, my sweet, sweet boy, who is only 2 weeks old? Let's start with talking about the penances. The penances are being lowered in requirement. The Justice Dispense, Arbites Gunner, and Castigator's Arrests are all being lowered from their 3,500 requirement, which granted was quite excessive and took a couple dozen hours to accomplish. Those are now lowered to much more reasonable levels, which will make it better for casual players to accomplish these penances. They are fixing issues with the Cyber Mastiff, namely when the Cyber Mastiff would jump into enemies right after they died, it would spaghettify these enemies and throw them all over the place. That is now patched, unfortunately, and they are also re-enabling smoke-emitting visual effects on the Cyber Mastiff mouthparts, as they were causing crashes in the prior patch. So that is all fixed, but we have to address the elephant in the room, which is that they nerfed bleed explosions. They have removed bleed explosions from the game. This is maybe the worst thing that has ever happened to me in my entire life, and I just don't understand how they could do this to me personally, of all people, for all that I've given them, for all the slop and the tide that I have put out here onto the internet, and they removed my bleed explosions. How could they? For those of you that are unfamiliar, bleed explosions were in effect when the remote detonation dog explosion blitz was used alongside holding out a weapon with the puncture blessing on it, either the bolt or the bolt pistol, and it would cause the dog explosion to apply bleed effects to every enemy within the radius up to the max stacks of 16 within a second or two. It was awesome. It brought me great joy every single day of my life, and without it, I don't know if I can go on living, but we must press on as the news demands it. That aside, they have also made some other changes that could be arguably considered buffs to the class. The Prosecution Blow talent, which is 20% ranged rending on critical hit, is been re-enabled. It was doing nothing before, so that will be a boon to ranged attackers on the Arbites class. And they have also fixed the pinpointing target blessing on the shot pistol and riot shield, which gives you additional stacking strength for every period of time you hold down the alt fire, therefore aiming over the shield on the shot pistol. This will end up being a very, very solid blessing on this weapon now that it is fixed and actually works. They have also nerfed Inspiring Recitation, as if we can't have anything good anymore, I guess. Inspiring Recitation, if you were unaware, was actually applying somewhere in the ballpark of 70 to 75% damage reduction when you were standing in its AoE, and this is the left side augment node on the Nuncio Aquila ability, by the way, and is now reverted to apply the actual 30% damage reduction as intended. And Castigator Stance has been fixed to now replenish toughness no matter whether you are standing in fire or other fire surfaces. As before, when you activated it, whether standing in a fire barrel, a fire bomber, or a flamer's effect, it would not replenish any toughness and leave you in a bad situation. And finally, they fixed tagging. Certain times in the games that you would be trying to double tag an enemy to get the dog to attack, it would just be disabled for whatever reason, and they claim to have patched that out. And finally, they are alleviating the issue where enemies that are labeled in that blue outline by the execution order keystone on the Arbites class would stay highlighted throughout the entire mission through walls all the way back as the start of the mission, and that is now being removed so those enemies can deload properly. And that is the general thrust of the changes that have been made to the Arbites here. On a more serious note, we all knew that this was coming. We all knew that the day would come where they would realize that these effects were happening and patch them out. And I just regret that I never got to say goodbye to Bleed Explosions. R.I.P. Bleed Explosions. We hardly knew ye. We will miss ye. And you were a good boy while you lasted. In terms of balancing, I think that this honestly squarely puts the Douglas playstyle quite a bit ahead of the Doug playstyle, because those grenades are now infinitely replenishing and are still very, very strong, although the dog still remains very potent at lower ranks. I think that in high Havoc, the dog will be less favored since you can't enable those bleed explosions now. As far as Inspiring Recitation, this is another nerf that we absolutely knew was coming. This was just clearly a mistake in the code where the damage modifier was supposed to remove 1/3 or 30% of damage and was instead multiplying all damage by 30%, so therefore giving a 70% reduction, and it was definitely made you invincible while you were standing in the zone. 30% is not nothing though. It's a very, very large toughness damage reduction, so this ability will still be very, very good while standing in its aura, and it's definitely still the must-take augment for the ability. And that's all the news I have for you today, guys. I have a date with a bowl of ice cream and a box of tissues to address some feelings that I'm feeling, and I hope you are having a good day. And the mystery out.